Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Opinionated Lushes Books and Booze, where we invite indie authors onto our platform to talk about some of their works, do a little reading for you, and talk about indie authoring. I don't know, writing and everything else. So I'll throw it to Dawn so she can introduce this week's author.
Hey guys, gals, theys, and thems, and thank you for joining us again on Books and Booze. Today we have Brenda joining us. Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, anything, your favorite drink. I want to hear it all.
Okay, well, I came prepared. I'm drinking Kahlua and cream. So,
Ooh.
yeah, my name is Brenda Tetreault. I am originally from the west coast of Oregon. I was born and raised there. Joined the military, married my husband, got out, went to Japan, and now we live in Delaware. And as Wayne says in Wayne's World, hi, we're in Delaware. Yeah. Thank God there's so much to do in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia, and all the states around Delaware, because aside from the beach, there's not a lot here. So,
We're Canadians, so we don't. There's not a lot here.
The closest I've gotten to Canada is the bridge on the American side of the bridge at Niagara Falls, and that was just a couple of years ago, and then COVID.
Oh, the Peace Bridge.
Yes, the Peace Bridge. I couldn't think of what it was called. I was going to call it the Rainbow Bridge, but that's...
There's both. Entirely. There's the Peace Bridge and the Rainbow Bridge. They're both there.
Oh, okay. Well, I did not know that. But yeah.
Neither did I.
My husband and I were in Niagara Falls a few years ago. Of course, we did the Maid of the Mist and the whole thing and absolutely loved it. And we didn't have our passports, and they weren't allowing anybody in, even though we had our military IDs, which kind of constitutes as a passport everywhere else, but it's okay. We got to get them renewed anyway, so someday. Someday our goal is to go back and see Niagara from the Canadian side and have some real authentic poutine and all that good stuff.
Yes.
We had a poutine in Maine a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, this is really good, but I bet if it was in Canada, it'd be even better. But we'll find out someday.
Now you can have everything on poutine. Everything's on poutine here nowadays.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Like you get, like you get the gravy and cheese curd, but now you can get like pulled pork poutine, cheeseburger poutine, bacon poutine, breakfast poutine, hangover poutine.
Oh, hangover poutine. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting. I wonder if it's got a fried egg on it.
Probably.
It does.
It does. You know,
and some hot sauce.
Oh, great. That's good. Awesome.
It's a favorite of mine.
I like to travel. Like I said, I was in the military for 2 years. I was in the Air Force for 2 years. My husband served 20 years. And we actually met in California. And about 9 months later, we said, hey, let's run off and get married. We were literally the insta-love couple.
Aww.
Only I denied it for a while. When he said those 3 little words, I looked at him and said, oh, honey, no, you don't. And I was,
not yet. I'm not ready.
I just had to break up. And, I was just like, no, really, you don't. You really don't want to do that. You do not want to fall in love with me. And to this day, he will tell me how terribly I crushed him that day. But he stuck around. I was this spoiled, rotten little brat bitch, and he stuck around. And it'll be 31 years married this summer. And, I mean, hey, he persevered and he stuck it out, and I guess he won. I may have denied it initially, but yes, it was literally love at first sight for both of us. And so when people tell me, instant love doesn't exist, I'm like, let me show you 30 years of insta love, you know. And everyone's like, happily ever afters don't exist. Let me show you 30 years of happily ever after. And that's why I write the books that I do. You know, yeah, sometimes there's insta love, sometimes it's a slow burn, but it's always a happily ever after. And that's because that's what I got.
That's amazing. Would you like to tell us a bit about the book that you're reading from today?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to be reading from Tempted, the first book in my Nightshade series. This is actually my second series. This is the story of Roman Arsenault, who is what's known as a Domthir in Romanian folklore. Is half human, half vampire, all badass. They pretty much exist to destroy Strigoi. And Strigoi are vampires or witches who have been starved to the point of bloodlust, where they are pretty much like the Terminator. They're very much unstoppable. You literally have to cut their heads off, cut their hearts out, and do everything to kill these things. And they will die. You just have to know how to do it. Roman's kind of one of the few guys in the world that can still do it. Sabrina is maybe human socialite who is the only daughter of a city councilman and his upwardly mobile wife. And they really only see her as nothing more than a prop for their own social upward climbing. And when she realized at a young age that they really didn't give two shits about her, she actually started acting out. And it is during one of these instances of acting out that Roman and Sabrina actually meet. And they go through their trials and tribulations. And, they eventually live happily ever after, I guess. We'll see.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll get the drink words ready for our listeners out there, and Dawn, so she can write them down in case she forgets.
Yes.
So our drink words for this is Roman, Sabrina, kiss, lips, and sexy.
Woohoo! Slip, sexy, Sabrina, and Roman. All right, I got this.
Now I went a little PG-13 here, but there's still a little spice. But it's short and sweet. But I really enjoy this chapter a lot. So
I'm excited to hear it. I'm going to mute my mic so you don't have to hear any of my slurping sounds during your reading. And so feel free to start whenever and just let us know when you're finished.
Okay. An hour later, legs freshly shaved, hair washed, and her skin smelling of the jasmine oil she'd used in her bath, Sabrina stood, dressed in her terry cloth robe and cradling a cup of hot tea in her hands, and staring in frustration at the contents of her closet. The size of a modest bedroom, Sabrina's closet was stacked, floor to ceiling, with more clothing, shoes, and accessories than one woman could wear in 5 years. So why couldn't she find anything to wear for her date with Roman? Of course, she wasn't entirely sure what to expect from a date with the dark, intense, and sensual man. But if he was anything like the first and last dates she'd had over the past year, she shook her head sharply. What the hell was she thinking? Anyone with half a brain knew that a first date with Roman Arsenault would be unlike any first date ever had by any woman at any point in the history of the world. At least that's what her instincts were shouting. She could only hope to follow that intuition and pray that it was right. She set her tea aside and, taking a deep breath, stepped into the closet. She just needed to relax and have fun. The first thing that caught her eye was a pair of black leather motorcycle boots that were not in their usual box, but rather sitting atop her jewelry armoire. Sabrina felt a little tingle run up her spine at the sight of her boots sitting there, almost as if they were waiting for her, or as if someone had left them there as a hint. Then shook it off and reached for the rugged footwear with a grin. She suddenly knew exactly what she was wearing tonight. Her doorbell chimed at precisely 7 p.m., and Sabrina smiled brightly in appreciation for Roman's manners. She couldn't begin to count the dates that had arrived late, or even worse, early, as she made sure the collar of her blouse was high enough to hide the hickey she discovered while applying her makeup, and checked her lipstick in the mirror one last time before opening the door. She vaguely remembered the feeling the moment he'd marked her, but at the time hadn't thought anything of it. Now she could only hope to keep it covered from her mother's eyes until it faded. The last thing Sabrina wanted was another lecture from her mother, and a hickey was a good way to set herself up for one. Grinning, she reached for the doorknob, swung open the door, and promptly sucked in an appreciative breath the moment she laid eyes on Roman. He was dressed in black trousers and jacket. He wore no tie, and the top 2 buttons of his silk charcoal gray dress shirt were undone. His shoes were black but unshined, and the watch that graced his wrist was an understated matte silver. His hair looked soft and curled enticingly over his ears and along his shirt collar. He wore no rings or pendants, and for that, Sabrina found herself feeling ridiculously relieved. She'd found that she could predict the level in which she'd enjoy an evening with a date by how much jewelry they wore. The more they wore, the less she enjoyed herself. Her smile grew wider as she greeted him. "Hi," she sighed, feeling breathless and excited. Roman almost didn't reply. He was too busy gawking at the gorgeous vision before him. Though it had been mere hours since he'd last seen her, Roman's memories paled in comparison to the lovely reality of Sabrina Donahue. Her skin seemed more luminous than he remembered, her body more lithe and beautiful than even his excellent memory could recall. And the fact that she'd somehow managed to echo his own style of downplayed chic and added her own little touches of punk had him grinning all the more. And he was finally able to unglue his tongue from the roof of his mouth long enough to return her greeting. It was that grin that made Sabrina realize she'd chosen her outfit well. Her leather motorcycle boots were on her feet, her legs clad in black stockings held up by a black satin garter belt over a matching pair of panties. Her black leather skirt was just long enough to not be embarrassing or indecent, and her dove gray silk blouse was unbuttoned, just enough to allow the lace of her sheer black bra to play peekaboo. Like Roman, she'd chosen silver as her jewelry, and she wore a pair of simple matte silver teardrop-shaped earrings, and around her neck was a black leather cord from which hung a simple matte silver teardrop-shaped pendant. She pulled her long hair back into a loose chignon at the base of her neck, securing it with a jeweled silver clip, leaving several loose curls unfettered to frame her face. A black leather jacket finished off the look, and as she allowed him to help her into it, Sabrina caught a hint of his cologne and felt her hormones stand up and take notice. The almost immediate arousal she felt caught her off guard. Okay, yeah, she knew he was knock your socks off gorgeous and had a body made for sin, but she dated other good-looking, sexy men without feeling the need to call off the date, grab them by the lapels of their expensive suit jacket, and pull them inside her apartment before locking the door and indulging in an all-night sex fest. And that's exactly what her hormones wanted her to do with Roman. Right here, right now, no excuses, no questions asked. So what do you have in mind for tonight? Sabrina couldn't believe that sultry purr of suggestion and invitation was her voice. Maybe he'd been thinking along the same lines as she and would suggest exactly the same thing she'd just been fantasizing about. A girl could always hope. She grabbed her little black clutch purse and closed the door of her apartment and leaned back against it as Roman leaned in close, caging her as he placed a hand against the door on either side of her head. "Oh," he murmured, trailing his lips along her jaw to her ear. "A little of this, perhaps a little of that." His warm breath over her ear caused her skin to erupt into goosebumps, and she gave a little gasp as he caught her earlobe in his teeth to give it a gentle tug. Her eyes drifted shut as his lips continued their foray down her neck, and she arched her head back to give him freer access. Her hands came up to clasp his head, and as his lips made a return foray up her neck, she was able to angle herself until his lips settled over hers, and she was once again drowning in the heat and the taste of his kiss. She arched into his body with a murmur of supplication, and when she felt him press into her, felt the heat of him branding her so deliciously, she groaned and neighed. On and on the kiss went, spinning out of control. Tongues dueled, breaths gasped, hands wandered and touched. Voices broke and needs rose. Once again, Roman's mouth traveled along the line of her neck, coming to rest at the wild pulse point at her throat. She felt the warm, wet heat of his tongue as it swept across the throbbing point, and just as she would have melted further into him, she felt him pause, almost as if he was trying to decide something important. And just for a moment, for a brief, intense, insane moment, she felt the impulse to urge him on, to tell him to bite, to taste. An odd, frightening, thrilling, and dark desire swept through her to feel his teeth against her skin, to feel his bite within her flesh. And she fell still as confusion crowded aside the lust she just luxuriated in. Roman felt the change fall over Sabrina, and with a rueful chuckle against her throat and one last sweep of his tongue against her slowing pulse, he managed to take a step back from the warmth of her body. He hadn't fallen ill as he had expected to after taking that small taste of her blood earlier in the afternoon, and the temptation to indulge in a long, leisurely tasting of her pounded through him, making his canine teeth ache and grow longer in his mouth, even as his body longed to be buried deep inside her, driving them both to complete and utter surrender as he did so. Soon, he said against her ear, his breath making shivers of fire shoot through her blood as desire rekindled. Very, very soon. Sabrina shivered at the promise in his husky whisper and was relieved to see that Roman seemed just as turned on as she was. She could hear it in his raspy voice, in the rough sound of his breathing, and certainly felt it in the rigid heat of his cock when he pressed into her one last time, butting up against her damp and achy core. Then, before she could do more than draw in a shaky breath, he was offering her his arm and escorting her to the elevator. And Sabrina found herself wondering if her panties were ever going to be dry again.
Ooh.
That was good. I got
all my drink. I know. This is like, whoa.
Refill.
Well, that was some foreplay. Whew. I'm even getting a little red.
Is it a little warm in here?
Whew.
Mm.
Oh, that was good. That was
Thank you.
good.
Thank you. And it just gets hotter from there.
So what made you choose your genre?
Okay, so like I said, I love to travel, and I grew up on the Oregon coast, and as a kid, my whole family, we traveled everywhere you could possibly travel on the entire Western Seaboard. Let me tell you, there were a lot of long summer road trips in the back of the family truckster, if you know what I mean. But the thing that fascinated me the most about when we traveled was the ghost stories, the folklore, the legends. And even to this day, when my husband and I travel somewhere, one of the first things I do is find a bookstore and get a book of the local ghost stories, legends, and folklore. Just because the way I see it, it doesn't matter what color, creed, country, nationality, origin. It doesn't matter who you are in your life or where you live in this world. The one thing that connects all of us, not just the color of our blood, but the passing down of legends and folklore. And every culture in this world has at least one ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
More than likely about 1,000 ghost stories. So, most people are like, oh, I love the food when I travel. No, I love the ghost stories when I travel. When I was a teenager, my friend introduced me to Johanna Lindsay romances. And this was back in the 80s when Fabio was on the covers. So we had the torn bodice and the wind sweeping through his hair kind of thing going on. and they were okay. You know, I devoured romance novels like most teenagers devour French fries and milkshakes. But there was just something missing, you know, and it just wasn't holding something for me. And then probably in my late 20s, I discovered Gina Showalter and the whole paranormal romance genre. And I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me we can combine ghost stories, folklore, and legends? I could do vampire romances? Really? Because I'd always loved Dracula growing up. I loved the movies. I read the book.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know how. I mean, I've seen every iteration of Dracula out there, and I've probably read every iteration as well. And so when I realized that I could write a romance with vampires and with dragon shifters and immortal men, and I was like, oh crap, here we go. And my first book is actually the first book of my previous series, the Bounty Cove Chronicles. And that was based on family history and legends and such and ghost stories that my grandmother taught me as a teenager. And that's when I said, let me try my hand at this. And I wrote the first book. It's called The Witcher Legacy. And I went on from there. And this is Tempted is my 7th book overall. There are, oh crap, how many are there now? I've written a grand total of 12 books. I'm working on the 13th.
Wow.
12 books. I'm working on the 13th now, and that has been quite a, oh boy, that has been a roller coaster of, you know, failed flash drives and
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I know the feeling of that. Is I'm in the middle of, you know, trying to write a book and my laptop just like pluck, and I was like, oh, here we go. So I definitely get that.
Yeah.
How long, since you've written so many books, how long does it normally take you to write a book?
Well, previous to the current one I'm writing, the current one I'm writing has been almost 3 years, just because life and technical issues and all that stuff really have gotten in the way. I write whenever I can, but normally a year. Yeah, about a year. And
That's not bad.
No, it's I fell out of my discipline for a while there, and I just have to reestablish my discipline, and once that happens, you know, it's like a water tap. You know, once you have to turn it on for the water to flow, and you actually have to write for the words to flow. So I'm working on getting my discipline back. So
Okay, well, speaking about like your writing and your process, are you more of like a was a plotter or a
planner?
Oh, no. I'm totally fly by the seat of my pants. It's literally, I like to say that I let my characters run wild and I just write the incident reports. So yeah, I'm one of the weird writers that actually visually sees the action happening in her head while it's happening, while she's writing it. It's like I'm literally watching a movie as I'm writing a transcript of the movie. So yeah, there have been times where I'll be writing, and I'm like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go. Wait a minute, where did that left turn at Albuquerque come from? Hey, where did you come? you know, characters, you try to raise them right, and they run off and do whatever they want. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they make new friends that you had no intention on having, and you're like, I don't know where this character came from, but I like them and they're staying.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'll literally wake up in the middle of the night and, you know, just to go to the bathroom or something, and I'll hear a whisper in my ear. And it's like, who are you? And does it have to be right now?
Yeah. Witching hour 3 a.m. That's mine. It's just.
Well, I usually am up between 3 and 3:30 every morning for work. So yeah, if they could just wait till I've had that first cup of coffee and I could like turn on my voice recorder on my phone, everything would be hunky dory. But no.
No, they don't like waiting. They like to interrupt you at the most peaceful time.
The thing that I hate though is you'll hear, "Hi, how are you? My name is so and so, and I'm going to be your next great love." And you're like, really, dude? that's kind of cheesy, number one. But number two, where do you think you fit in here? You know, I know of no new characters coming out of the woodwork right now. No, you just sit there in the corner, do your coloring, and when I'm ready for you, I'll call you.
You wait your turn, sir. You wait your turn.
Exactly.
Oh, that's amazing. What would you say is the hardest thing about being an author?
The promoting and the marketing. You know, Facebook is pretty much dead for book promotions anymore. Twitter is like screaming into the wilderness. I only discovered TikTok in October, you know, and I mean, it's really helped. Instagram is more for food and travel anymore.
Yeah.
And so TikTok has really become my lifeline. And honestly, it's a lot easier now. It makes it easier now to, you know, hey guys, you know, and be silly and you know, 5 reasons why you really don't want to read this book. You know? But yeah, I would have to say marketing and promoting, getting the word out. I do a little guerrilla campaigning, as it were. Example, beginning of the month, I was working safety and security at a convention up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I brought a bunch of my business cards with me, and I left them laying around the whole convention center. Yeah,
that's what we do.
Yeah. We leave like stickers on
Flyers
trains and stuff.
Random shit.
Like, you know,
yeah, absolutely.
whatever you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I've been known to leave them in the women's bathroom at restaurants and at train stations and such. So, you know, and my son, God bless him, he's a Starbucks barista while he's going to school, and he will literally tell customers, "Hey, I see you like to read these kind of books. My mom writes those kind of books. Here's her business card." So he's almost like my traveling business manager, you know. But that, I have to say, I know others would say, "Oh God, writing the blurb." No. I would rather write 800 new book blurbs and each one be different than have to spend more than a couple hours a week doing marketing and promoting. Because you just don't know what's going to hit, you know.
Yeah.
You can take a look and you can study the trends, but the moment that you lock in, that's the moment something else takes over.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to anticipate, but I think I'm getting better at it. So we'll see.
Yeah. So since you fly by the seat of your pants, do you find you have to edit a lot in your writing?
I actually edit as I go. I'm one of these people, and I mean, there are some school of thoughts out there that say, do not edit before you finish the first draft. I'm like, bitch, please. I was taught how to write book series by, Daddy George Lucas, and there's always a trilogy, and there's always a first, middle, and end act, and there's always a first, second, and third in the trilogy, and they don't necessarily have to come in order. So, but when I reopen my manuscript for a new day of writing, I will go back to the beginning of the last section that I wrote, and I'll be sitting going, well, did I really mean to use that word? I don't think I really meant to use that word. Let's change that word. And I know I did, and I'll sit there going, I don't think so. Let's delete. And the next thing I know, I've deleted like half of what I wrote the last time. I'm like, okay. And then I start going on to the next section that I plan to write. So, I'm just one of those people. And I will literally stop in the middle of a session and scroll back going, okay, let's see. What did I write? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's rewrite. And I edit as I go. And
yeah, well, it's just interesting because we've had like a few indie authors obviously on our show, and they all have different processes. It's like, you know, some just write and then they edit everything. Others like plan to the smallest detail before they write. And I'm just like, oh my, like there's so many ways to write a book, I guess.
There's just like there's a million different ways to chew bubble gum. There's a million different ways to write a book. Someone once said, and honestly, I don't remember who it was, and I don't remember the exact quote, but someone said all writers are psychotics. And I was like, because they listen to little voices in their heads. I was like, you know, that makes sense. But I would like to also add an addendum to that. Yes, we're all psychotics, but we're the sweeter, fluffier, kinder, gentler ones who don't need medication. You know?
Oh, well, I wouldn't go that far because I'm pretty sure I'm medicated.
I promise those little voices we're listening to are not telling us, you know, are not coming from the cat and telling us to do something despicable. So
you just got to get those voices out of your head onto the paper.
And I work retail. So, and if you know anything about the retail life.
Oh, I do.
I will be 52 this year. I have been working retail since I was 14. And let me tell you something. There are some people who go nameless in my books who end up being hapless victims of monsters and strange and unusual occurrences. Because when it comes down to it, writing's my therapy. And I can't stand up and, you know, I can't jump up on the counter and say, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You know, triple hate you. You know.
You're cool. Fuck you.
I'm out.
I can't do that. So the ones that particularly piss me off get turned into ghoul shit and dragon treats and
That sounds therapeutic.
It actually
amazing.
Is. It very much is. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Have you met a fellow author who is like more on the famous scale before?
Do you know who Patricia Cornwell is?
No. I wish I did.
I don't know.
Okay, Patricia Cornwell writes the Kay Scarpetta murder mystery. So actually getting ready to make them into a TV series with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Okay.
They're true crime. Patricia Cornwell is a lawyer. She spent time in the Richmond, Virginia coroner's office. She's a doctor. I mean, she's literally doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. And she writes this amazing forensic pathologist character named Kay Scarpetta, who helps the Richmond PD solve crimes by using forensic science. We live near Dover Air Force Base here in Delaware, and she came to the base to tour our mortuary where we receive fallen soldiers from overseas. And while she was there, she did a book signing. And our store manager at the time that I was working for already knew I was a writer, and he arranged for me to meet her.
Oh,
that was nice.
And I got a little private meet and greet, and then she signed the copy of my copy of her latest book, and said she signed, Brenda, good luck on your writing career. And,
that's amazing.
And of course, I've been to author events and met some really amazing indie authors, but you know, the fact that she took the time and she was like excited about it. She's like, oh, absolutely, I will definitely meet her. And we talked for 20 minutes, and it was just like, you know, it was like I'd met Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and God all in one.
All in one, just wrapped up.
And I was really cool. I didn't fangirl too terribly badly.
But, a little.
I had literally read all of her books up to that point multiple times. I had my favorites. I literally would have like a battered paperback copy in my car or in my purse, you know, at work under the counter. I was working at the flower shop that was just down from the store that we were working, that I was, you know, that was taking place in. So, you know, flower shop doesn't not always the most hopping scene on the planet. So if I wasn't writing a book, I was reading a book. So it was amazing. It really, really was. So, and I will treasure that forever. And not only did she write it in my book, she said it to my face. And, and you could tell she meant it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wasn't just putting on the face.
She was genuine. She knew it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And that's one of the things that's always stuck with me. And that's probably one of the reasons why when somebody asks me a question like that, she's the first person that pops into my head. So
yeah.
That's awesome.
Do you have any advice? We always love to ask, other indie authors, that especially those that have books out. Do you have any advice for newcomer writers or people that want to start writing?
I'll tell you the advice my grandmother gave me when I complained to her when I was 13 years old and visiting her for the summer that I was bored with all the books. She said, "Oh, you can't find anything to read. Why?" Well, because I'm bored. I had already read The Shining by the time I was 9. So, a lot of the stuff that was out there that was my age appropriate was just boring. And she said, okay. So write the book you want to read. And I said, what? And she said, you heard me. She gave me a yellow legal pad from her desk and a pen and said, start writing a book. Well,
wow.
When you're 13, how do you don't even know where to begin. And she took pity on me. And that's when she started telling me all the family history and stuff. But that is always my write the book you want to read. And if anybody ever tells you, oh, ain't nobody going to read that. Who's going to read that? Well, if you wanted to read it, guess what, sweetheart? Someone else is going to want to read it.
There's 100 others that are just like
that's
you.
Right. That's right. So just do it. Go for it. And don't worry about grammar, punctuation. Just get those thoughts down on paper or into your computer, however you want to do it, into a voice recorder, however you want to do it. Just get those thoughts recorded in one way or another, and then worry about the rest later.
Awesome.
Good advice.
It is. It's great advice.
Okay. So when you're writing a book, you said it takes about a year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a year of just writing the story, or is that full editing?
That's full editing. That's beta reading. That's alpha reading. That's the whole smack. Yeah.
Okay. So how long does it take you to write at least the first draft that you also edit?
The first draft, okay. So an example, Tempted took me, let's see, this published in 10 years ago. So what was 10 years ago?
That would have been 2012. 2013.
I can't math. So this came out 2013. I would say this probably took me 3 or 4 months to write first draft. And I said, I edit as I go. So it makes the editing process later a lot easier for me. Because by the time I'm going into my second, third, and fourth rounds of editing, it's pretty much cemented the way I want it. And by the time that's happening, it's usually just grammatical and, hey, did you mean to write there instead of that? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
just grammar. Just
Yeah, really just the polishing is really what's left once I'm done writing that first draft. Because like I said, I edit as I go. So
yeah, it's just always interesting to me to because we've had some writers that their first book took them 10 years, and then other writers pop it out in a month, and it's just I
never understood.
There's such a spectrum.
I never understood the ones who could literally pop a new book out every 2 weeks or every month. They do a book a month for a year, and it's how? I thought I was pretty fast,
I'll tell you how. They don't have kids. That's how. They don't have little
kids,
demons bugging them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I work almost full time, so yeah.
So the fact that you're still able to be this prolific in your writing, 12 books, that's a lot. Some people spend their whole lives writing that first one.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that'll be me.
And those are truly the labors of love. Those are the ones who
Yeah.
said, damn it, I am going to finish this book. I am going to write my story come hell, high water, and whatevs. And those are truly the labor of loves. I'm just trying not to get psychotic. So
Do you think you'd ever write other genres?
I've actually been dabbling in what I call Hallmark romances, the clean ones, the ones they could adapt into Hallmark. I love like murder mysteries and Agatha Christie. And like I said, Patricia Cornwell. However, I just don't feel like my brain is geared for that kind of genre. And I know I'm definitely not geared for science fiction. So I have a feeling if I'm going to write something other than paranormal, it's probably going to be clean romance, sweet romance.
Contemporary. Yeah.
Contemporary, that kind of thing. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, you got some funny stuff in your books, only accidentally. Yeah. I don't sit there and go, oh yeah, that's going to be so funny. No, usually if you find something funny in the book that I've written, it's been purely accidental. So.
It's kind of how my life is. Everything's accidental.
Accidentally funny or just accidental? You're just like, oh no, it's an accident.
Well, it's accidental and then it turned funny. So
yeah, it's like, oh wow, okay. Like I said, I let them run wild. I tell them what they want to, they tell me what they want me to write, and I write up the incident report. So if someone cracks a one-liner or something, it goes in. And just, I don't have any inherently funny characters or anything like that, but every now and then someone says, oh my God, that character is so funny. He said the funniest thing. I think the closest thing I have is Marty, my sawed-off unicorn. Yeah. think Danny DeVito as a unicorn.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
yeah.
He belches in Princess's face. He likes his stogies and single malt mash, and yeah, he's Danny DeVito in unicorn form. So
I'm the garbage man. I'm the trash man. I take out the trash. That's all. Danny DeVito. Well, that's great. Is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to your writing? I've asked all my questions, so I just want to open it up if there's anything specific that we might have missed that you think is important. Oh God, go.
Okay. Do you have a special ritual while you write? Like, do you need to get a special candle lit? Do you have to have a drink? Do you have to have a special notebook, a special pen? Like, is there a ritual?
Every time I start a new book, I get a new notebook, a new set of pens, and I have not just black and blue ink. I have sparkly glitter ink and pinks and purples and whatnot. And then I have cute little pencils with cute little erasers. That's for traveling. That's when I'm outside of the house. And then I'll come home and I'll just transpose that into the computer. But if I am at home sitting down for a full-on writing session, and like I said, I got to get my discipline back. But usually what I end up doing is, yes, I either light a candle or I have some kind of essential oil going. I've got my unicorn lights lit that I have strung across my office windows. And I always have to have a bowl of ramen soup. I love eating ramen while I'm writing. And then I have a snack drawer that has peanut butter cracker sandwiches in it. A couple of those, because I don't. And I have a little mini fridge that usually has the little 7-ounce sodas, because every now and then.
Yeah, little cans.
Yeah. Every now and then I want a little Coke or something to go with it. And yeah. So I have a snack drawer, but I always have to have a bowl of ramen noodles while I'm writing.
That's so cool.
That's interesting.
I never would picture ramen. Yeah.
I haven't heard that one before. That one's new.
Yeah. Well,
so you're unique.
Well, I hope so. We spent 4 years in Japan, and I got kind of addicted to ramen noodles then, and my son, who was born there, loves all things Japanese and ramen noodles, and so always got to have a bowl of them.
Fair. Ramen is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Even the cheap 40-cent packets will do in a pinch. It doesn't have to be gourmet. I'm not picky as long
Yeah,
as it's
Mr.
on the
Niddle
menu.
works.
Yes,
Ramen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to open up this so that you can plug in any socials that you have. Let the listeners know where to find
well,
you.
you can find me on Facebook at Brenda Tetreault Author. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Nightshade_Mama. And you can find my books on Amazon for Kindle, KU. They're in print, and you can also get them through Audible.
Ooh.
Nice.
And for our YouTube watchers, you can see the little Amazon store link just listed below, as well as we'll have all the links to all the socials in our description. So they'll be able to find you. We'll make sure.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Well, if so I have no more questions. Dawn, you said you had no more questions.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
We're good. Thank you so much for being on. This was fun and like again, unique answers. We haven't got ramen yet. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really had a great time. I haven't had
It's been a pleasure.
I haven't done one of these in
Yeah.
so long. I kind of forgot how to do it for a second there.
we
forget
forget
how to
every
do it, and I
time.
do it quickly.
We just make it up.
Just kind of wing it till you make it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically.
exactly. Well, thank you again
All
so
right.
much for joining us on this episode of Books and Booze. So we're going to say a good night, everyone. And once again, make sure to check out the description where all the links will be available. If you liked that reading, you can get that book. Bye,
Good
guys.
night.
Night.